Hello, everyone. Good morning. I welcome you all to this quarterly immersive series by nasscom. In this quarterly immersive series, we are going to discuss about industry academia collaborations, where we are bringing in best-in-class R&D industries and universities to share their learnings and their journey to the wider ER&D ecosystem, to accelerate their learning curve and to drive this sustainable and industry growth. So this series is going to have 3 sessions, and we are going to start this session where in this session, we are going to discuss about accelerating the research through industry academia partnership. So our moderator, Vandana, and speakers are all ready. So Vandana, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avinash. And a very good morning to all of you who have joined us today. I am Vandana Babu, Principal Analyst at nasscom. So this is the first panel discussion of the three-part series of nasscom's quarterly immersive series on industry-academia collaboration, which focuses on developing industry-ready talent and fueling innovation through successful industry-academia collaborations. So this series is split into 3 sessions, wherein we will delve into 3 key themes of industry-academia collaboration. So the first one, which is happening today, which is accelerating research through academia industry partnerships. Tomorrow, we will have the joint curriculum designed to make students industry ready. And on 16th, that is day after, we'll have hacking innovations with industry in university hackathons. So I'll set up a brief context for today's discussion. Enterprises are undergoing a distinct transformation in today's era as a result of confluence of forces such as rapid technological change, evolving customer expectations, shorter product life cycles, disruptive business models, and increased competition from new age startups. At the same time, universities are under pressure due to the difficulties of funding ongoing research, commercializing research efforts, providing better industry exposure to students, and playing a more decisive role in influencing the country's economic growth. Increased collaboration and knowledge exchange between industries and universities can provide a strong foundation for improving innovation and facilitating mutual value creation for the entire ecosystem. Organizations require access to strong domain expertise, an emerging talent quotient, and a rich library of innovative research efforts and technical IP. At the same time, such collaborations assist universities in meeting their needs for R&D funding, access to real-world problem statements, and increased opportunities for both the faculty and student communities. Joint applied research initiatives mutually benefit from the expertise of industry experts, university faculty, and scholars. However, an applied research collaboration between industry and academia is fraught with numerous challenges and bottlenecks, such as the issue of ownership of IP rights, funding crunch, availability of resources, industry seeking to manage resources as full-time employees, and so on. So in today's session, we will have an in-depth discussion on how to create a successful industry-academia partnership for joint research. We have leaders from industry and academia who have built successful joint research collaborations to share their views, experience, and insights with us. And we want this session to be as interactive as possible. So I encourage all all the people who have joined today to type in your questions in the Q&A box, and we will take it towards the end of the session. So I welcome all our panelists for the day, and I would request them to kindly introduce themselves as I share their names. Sumeet Verma, Director, Strategic Engagements at Intel India. Padmini Ramesh, External Collaborations Lead GE Aviation, Bangalore Engineering Center. Professor Manu Santanam, Dean of Sponsored Research and Industrial Consultancy, IIT Madras. Professor Arkaprava Basu, Associate Professor, IISc, Bangalore. So I would request Sumeet to kindly introduce himself.
Good morning. Thank you, Vandana. Good morning, dear panelists, Padmini, Ramesh, Professor Manu, and Dr. Arka. And a warm welcome to all the participants for today's panel discussion. My name is Sumeet Verma and I represent Intel Corporation. While I have spent a couple of decades in Intel, I had the good opportunity to be working with academia for over a dozen years. And in my current role, I'm responsible for ecosystem alliances to strengthen India tech ecosystem. Because if there's a strong India tech ecosystem, then Intel and companies like Intel will grow, and that will also participate, ensure there's a strong economic growth for India as per se. So that's about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sumeet. Padmini, I would request if you could kindly introduce yourself.
Sure, Vandana, and thank you, NASCOM, for this opportunity to be in this esteemed forum. And also, I'm really glad to meet our panelists here. And good morning to all the viewers. I'm Padmini Ramesh. So I represent GE Aviation, which is now called GE Aerospace technology team in India. And GE has various verticals, including aerospace, power generation, and also healthcare. But I'm going to talk more in terms of what we have been doing from aerospace organization. I lead all external collaborations, including academia, governments, and other industries in the region to enable our R&D footprint here in region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Professor Santanam, if I would request if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Vandana. A very good morning to all my co-panelists and also to all the participants who have joined this webinar today. I'm Manu Santhanam, Professor of Civil Engineering at IIT Madras and also currently the Dean of Industrial Consulting and Sponsored Research. So essentially our office manages all the projects undertaken by faculty members of IIT Madras. We help them set up their project budgets. We help them manage their finances, purchases, recruitments, and all the other processes that go along in managing a project so that faculty have their own time to actually concentrate on their academic and research pursuits. So yeah, it's very nice to be here and I look forward to this interaction.
Thanks, Professor Manu. Professor Basu, I would request you to kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Vandana, and thanks to NASCOM for providing this opportunity. This is a very pertinent topic to talk about. So I'm a faculty at the Computer Science Department at IISc, and I joined IISc not so long back. It was in 2018 when I returned to India. But before that, I had an industry background. I spent about 3-4 years in AMD research at Austin. So I have seen both sides of the world. So glad to be here.
Thank you everyone for sharing those insights. Now, before kickstarting the session, let us have a quick poll from the audience members. So I would request the moderator to kindly share the poll. So this is a quick poll, and we want to understand that what is the makeup of the overall participants. So quick 30 seconds poll. So yeah, the first question is, which of the following organization do you belong to? Is it academia or industry? And the second question is your organization currently engaged in a joint applied research collaboration with a university or industry? If yes, how many of these research projects does your organization collaborate with on an average per year? So if we can quickly have that poll. Yeah. So yes, majority 73% from the industry and remaining from the academia. And yes, there are quite that's quite a great combination here, 2 to 5 and more than 5 projects. So approximately 50% of the audience has from 2 over at least 2 of the projects that they are doing every year. So I hope this session would be of great interest to all of you. So let's quickly get down to it. So, my first question is to Sumeet. We know that Intel India is partnering with several universities and also with the government to accelerate research, in new age technologies. So, what is the objective, first of all, of this collaboration? And also, what impact have you seen, and which is expected from such collaborations? So, can you shed some light on that?
Sure. Thank you, Vandana. So academic collaborations is in the DNA of Intel. We were, I think, one of the first companies that started going to academia, sharing their product specs so that academia could do research and take it further for academic purposes. In India, the academic programs is at least 15 years old, if not 20. Um, and we started with several academic collaborations, but we included research just only a few years ago. Earlier, the research program was primarily driven out of the parent US or corporation, and then we said, okay, we are a big entity. We need to engage with local academic ecosystem directly and holistically, and we started a program to accomplish that. Our key objectives are, first of all, to have a strong India tech ecosystem that has research, publications going on at a good pace, because then it helps everyone. Second objective is to have a fruitful research outcome from India, and the outcomes could be defined either through business outcomes or research problems that gives us solutions for a particular area which may not be a business purpose but are kind of industry or country or global problems. And we also, a side incentive is also to engage with our local technical leadership so that they can increase their technical acumen through these collaborations. So those are the key collaborations that we do. And what we have done a few years ago, we set up a all new program called Intel Leadership and Excellence in Academic Development. So we kind of overhauled the overall academic engagements, how we do at Intel in India, and said that what are the key functional areas that we should engage with in India. And we identified 5 areas. The first one is the high impact research, which is kind of the core discussion for today's topic. And we engage with academia through several ways, which we'll get a chance to know about it in a bit. But other few areas which, although do not directly impact research, are important because those kind of funnel in the research collaborations. First one is knowledge and innovation exchange, where we have people from our company go and talk in academia and vice versa, because that platform that's required to exchange communication is vital. We also have something called collaborative classrooms for curriculum as well as co-teaching, where an Intel representative works in academia to teach a class. Then talent for India tech ecosystem, and predominantly focusing on research talent, because having strong research talent and growing research talent is very important for India. So we have focus areas and programs to do that. And lastly is the Executive Connect, which focuses on key institutes and try to bring them on the global roadmap of Intel, so that these institutions are not only recognized and we do collaborations locally, but they're also deemed as strategic schools for Intel Corporation at a global level. With that, I'll pause. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sumeet, for sharing those insights. Padmini, I would, ask you the same questions because, G India has also have had so many collaborations with so many universities, as well as government as well for research projects. So can you share something about these projects that have been undertaken by G?
Sure. So as we all know, GE has very variety of products, and we are continuously investing in several technologies that we can incorporate in our products. And as Sumeet mentioned, this is in the DNA of the organization, and it is very prevalent across the globe in various countries where GE has worked with academia continuously and other organizations continuously to leverage the ecosystem in this area. And so it was but natural for India also to very quickly adapt this. And we have been engaged with several universities, and as you said, started with government or organizations as well. So GE, as I said, I represent the GE Aerospace team in India, and we are focused on several technologies which enable to make a product like new age gas turbine technologies, services, advanced manufacturing technologies, and digital technologies. These are some of the broad areas that our teams are continuously engaged on. And in all of these areas, we are working with several universities and government in advancing these technologies. And most of these, the nature of engagement has been collaborative research. And this is about our engagement with universities or academia in India.
Great. Thank you, Padmini, for that insight. So we've heard from the industry side of the panel. So let's come to the academia side. So, Professor Manu, this is for you, that, IIT Madras has had so many research collaborations with the industry. So can you share some of them in brief?
Yeah, so thank you, Vandana. Yes, IIT Madras has been at the forefront when it comes to industry collaborations. At any given time, I think we have more than about 1,500 projects ongoing with many Indian and international clients. What we want to do is engage in a fruitful dialogue with industry, which results in a win-win. As you know, academic environment, there's a lot of pressure on faculty to pursue their academic ambitions, primarily publications and things like that. But at the same time, the validation of the technologies that we develop in our research comes only when we actually collaborate with the industry, because a lot of research put into practice is what really gets us onto the real, onto the technology map. And that's what we are trying to instill in our faculty and students, to try and get their technologies as fast as possible into the real commercial arena. So what we do typically is enhance the incentives that faculty get while taking up industry-related projects, which helps them actually move beyond their comfort zones to actually get to some of these assignments, which otherwise they will not take up. So yeah, I mean, in terms of engagements, our engagements with the industry vary from very short term, 1 to 6 months, all the way up to 5 to 10 years in some cases, where we have prolonged engagements. I mean, of course, they start off as a 3-year engagement typically, but these are sometimes prolonged into much longer collaborations. And some of them have resulted in state-of-the-art centers being established at IITM, where there's a constant engagement with the industry. And some of these have been responsible for the most well-known contributions from IIT Madras in the engineering sector.
Wow, great. Thanks, Professor Manu. Professor Basu, same question for you. If you could elaborate some points on IISc's joint research collaborations with the industry.
Sure. Professor Manu provided more institute perspective from IIT Madras. So I'll take the other route, like when providing my personal views about personal engagement at the with my lab, right? In particularly, I can actually talk about the 2 engagements that are going on. One, of course, with Intel Labs. Sumeet is well aware of it, and also with Microsoft Research, right? And IISc has, with G, Cisco, they have with other faculties they have engagement. I would not talk about that, but say for our engagement with Intel Labs or Microsoft Research. So what really worked is both from the Intel Labs and the Microsoft Research, the people who were there, we already knew them. That personal connect was very useful. And the reason that happened because they were also prolific in terms of their presence in the academic publication venues. So we know some of the cutting edge work they have been doing. At the same time, of course, we keep on publishing at those same venues, right? So that personal connect was really important for the collaborations that we had. The second thing was in both in case of our collaborations that is ongoing with Intel Labs, as well as the work that we are doing with Microsoft Research, those are not tightly coupled with an particular product. They are much more future looking, because some of the problems that you actually mentioned, that if industry start thinking about a particular, say human resource, a student as a full-time employee, these are the things that you're actually bringing up as a potential problem. Now, those might actually happen more when there is an tight coupling with the product. This also can create more trouble with things like non-disclosure agreements and so on. So when the projects are more looking ahead in the future, I think that's where it becomes win-win. It's not only about looking into the future research, but also it's in terms of training and student who could go on becoming an excellent employee at the industry, because finding a good human resource has always been one of the biggest challenge. So
yes, thanks, Professor Basu. That was like a very keen insight that you had shared, and brought in that personal example as well that you are currently engaged in. So we've had a discussion about the current collaborations that each one of you are having with your institute or with your organization. So now we can move towards the challenges or preconceived notions that all of us have, and whether the industry or the academia side, what are some of the challenges or preconceived notions. So Sumeet, I would come back to you again. So what has how has this nature of collaboration evolved in these recent years, and also what kind of challenges do you face typically during such collaborations?
Thank you, Vandana. So we've over last few years we have tried several things. We have tried to do fundamental research. We have tried to do applied research. We have tried and experimented with open source research, which is very popular, as well as IP generating research. We have experiencing in funding the research alone, and we also have experience in co-funding with another entity. We've also tried in various budget range in terms of scope, from a small project for a few $1,000, and we have also set up large applied research center for millions of dollars in India. So we have experimented across the spectrum, and with that experience, some challenges that we feel that are worth mentioning. First one is, for a industry like Indian entity industry, there are only limited dollars, because it's very difficult to move for an MNC to move dollars from the parent country to a local country. So we have limited dollars, and we want to optimize that dollars money through efficient usage. And we also look for opportunities to do that. We also realize that all the research makes sense long term. It's a long term commitment, multi-year commitment. But we haven't had a great experience in doing 5 years research in India. What we have realized is that 2 to 3 years is a good sweet spot, because anything beyond that becomes overcommitting. It's okay to start 2-3 years and then extend it, rather than put in 5 years commitment and then things don't work out as you plan. Business condition changes, there are churn in academic situation, or the area that you are trying to focus on is no longer relevant. So we run into those issues. So duration is very important, and we are now kind of trying to do no more than 3 years of research. Although we understand the longer it is, better it is from a academic process perspective. Another area is the core: what research or what problem are you trying to solve, right? I think the sweet spot we have identified is that the research problem that we're trying to solve, there has to be local ownership and accountability. Although in a matrix organization, you have very multiple people floating around, and India has a lot of alumni across the globe, and they're also very passionate to do research in India. But at time we realize that the core problem, if that functional group has ownership in India, then it brings a lot of stability and focus and mentorship to the research problem itself. So that's another area that we find from an industry perspective should be considered. Another area, it's not a big challenge, but a longer paperwork always is a pain, right? We've realized that paperwork has become even more tedious over the last few years. Few years ago, the paperwork process was like a month. Now, for newer engagements, the paperwork takes quite some time, and it goes into borderline frustrating to losing interest, right? So that's a challenge that industry faces. And even if you go from one IIT to another IIT, for that matter, right, things are very different, right?
Got it. Yeah.
And of course, I'm not going to dwell into the IP challenges as now, but I think those are some of the challenges. And of course, beyond that, if you have a right team, industry, right problem that has been identified, of course, with the right academic partner, and there's a continuous involvement from an industry representative in that research problem, we have seen very good and positive result outcomes. Right? So there are challenges, but having said that, if we get the right structures and team in place, then the results are very, very fruitful for both parties.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing those insights. Padmini, I come to you now. So and Sumeet has sort of hinted that as well in his answer, that, there are certain challenges with respect to IP rights, ownership issues, expectations of different outcomes, also availability of PhD scholars. So their bandwidth, are they available or not? So what challenges do you face did you face while you were undertaking these collaborations, and also what kind of steps did you take to address them?
Okay. So we have a few projects which are completely funded by GE, but what is really lucrative for us is co-funding opportunity, where we work with academia and there's a cost share to it. So when I talk about challenges, I come from that angle, and there are challenges, as you have rightly pointed out. Definitely, the ones that you have highlighted by Sumeet, about availability of PhD scholars, paperwork, IP rights issue, and other things. And along with that, if I have to highlight some of the things that we have personally faced, are in terms of alignment of outcomes, what business needs versus what could be defined as a good outcome for academia. And so given the nature of the problem that we deal with, so we are say aircraft engine manufacturers. So the projects, the research work involves setting up of very complex test rigs, developing prototypes of very complex nature, elaborate testing, and so on and so forth. A lot of challenges we face are around coordination with academic function, not just the professors, but other functional areas in the academic institutions, like procurement, legal, finance, infrastructure teams, and so on and so forth. That has been something which we definitely want to improve, which helps in overall program management for these research collaboration projects. Apart from that, there could also be an expectation coming from the partnering funding agency, and there could be a mismatch between the expectations. So there are multiple parties involved here. So there could be mismatch between expectation from academia, from industry, from the funding agency. So managing those expectations and the communication flow between all of these stakeholders smoothly. So these are some of the challenges that we face day to day. Some of the steps that we have taken is definitely what has worked a lot is really working as an extended team with academia. So we have established very good working relationships. There's always a one team approach where our teams, the technical team working on the project are very hands-on and are involved. We have people going and staying on campus for a while when these projects are going on. We have like very regular communication rhythm set up with them. So that is something that we are able to do well, and that has helped address some of the other challenges to be able to keep moving forward smoothly. Some of the other things that I would like to highlight is utilization of various opportunities, like with Department of Science and Technology and CRP, which is the agency which looks after disbursement of funding and identifying opportunities. So with them we have this SERB fire, which is where the industry defines the problem area and takes lead in terms of identification of the right academic institutions, where at least the problem definition and the outcome definition is clearer upfront for both academia and industry. So this is another step that we have taken in order to improve this whole process. So we spend a lot of time in paperwork, trying to lay down very clear terms and roles and responsibilities, IP sharing agreement, cost sharing agreement. All these things we do spend a lot of time upfront. We have tried to set up a team which relieves the technical team from this burden, and we handle that upfront, or there's a team which helps them with these. I understand it can become frustrating many times for the people, for the professors and our technical teams who are more focused on the problem on hand. But we have tried to set up support for these teams to handle them upfront. So these are some of the things that I can share from our interactions.
Great. Thanks, Padmini, for sharing those insights. So we've heard from the industry side. Now, what are some of the challenges, that the academia is facing, and what are some preconceived notions as well that are being addressed by them? So, Professor Manu, there are also in academia as well, there are many challenges that the academia is facing, such as lack of specialized technical infrastructure or lack of critical mass of experts. And also, basically lack of time for the professors, as you had shared, because they have to focus on their own, field of research. So, and of course, internal policies as well. So, what steps have you taken to address these challenges? And if you can share some examples as well, so that would be helpful.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to add that yes, Padmini and Sumeet actually have addressed some very critical points with respect to challenges of operating a joint research between academia and industry. We have the same kind of issues from our side, and being publicly funded institutions, we have added difficulties in quickly getting onto the ball, so as to say, because we have a lot of procedures that need to be followed, and both of them had hinted on all the paperwork that they need to do. Yes, unfortunately, we have to live with that, and we try to create ways in which we can speed those things up, but I mean, there's no real escaping from that aspect overall. But in terms of faculty, attitudes have changed significantly. If you look 10 to 15 years in the past, industry research was not something that faculty would consider doing in a large way, because a lot of the faculty used to believe at that point that industry research is a misnomer. They used to think that industry implies you are solving short-term problems. There is no possibility of innovations coming out of there and so on. But that attitude has significantly changed. Also because of the engagement that we've had with the industry and how industry has actually come forward to seek help from academia. So that has really helped change that. The young faculty of today, as soon as they join, they have some plans or the other for engagement with the industry. And that's a very welcome change that we're seeing over the last 10 years. With respect to infrastructure, that is something that we've been, at least from IIT's side, we've been trying to build up. I'm sure all major institutions in the country are doing that and have been fairly successful at that also. Critical mass of experts in some cases, yes. What happens is there are certain instances when you have only one or two faculty members who are specialists in a particular area. They don't really have a group that can actually take the research forward at a very fast pace, which is typically desired by the industry. So yeah, there are some challenges there, but again, we try to look at specific needs in such research areas, especially where we expect a large amount of growth to happen. For instance, telecommunications is something that we have been focusing on in a big way. AI, all of these areas are some things that we've really invested in a lot of new faculty and developing infrastructure to match the needs of what the industry wants to do. So yeah, I mean, those are challenges, but yes, we are prepared to meet those. Of course, I mean, probably at a later stage, I'll also talk about the other challenges that already Padmini and Sumeet have referred to. But yeah, that's all from my side.
Great, great. Thanks, Professor Manu. And Professor Basu, same question for you that, often while partnering with academia, so organizations also have concerns regarding confidentiality, and also the industry is also not aware of the academia's research potential, so to say. So how do we, these preconceived notions that everybody has, how do we dispel them? And also then how do you approach the collaboration as well from your end?
Yeah, so some of it, I would actually say that it was easier for me, at least personally, it was easier for me for two reasons. One, as I said, like, I already had an view from the other side because of my past, the career in the industry. That is one. And when I was there, I interacted with US universities often. So I saw the value that can actually bring. So that's one part of it. The second, what Sumeet mentioned, like, this paperwork and so on, we have been through this together. He would remember, the late evenings in IISc. So yes, there are challenges, particularly, there are legal teams from both sides get involved. And that, sometimes takes actually longer. But one of the things that I have actually seen is that if you have two persons on two sides, both really willing for that collaboration to work out, it happens. It happens because on both sides, the technical persons who will be, say, wanting to collaborate, they'll say to their team, that legal team, say, this needs to happen. And then, so that interest and the keenness is very important. Rest of the things then actually typically fall in place. Yes, it might take more than a month, 2 months, 3 months, but ultimately it works out. And typically all these agreements, for example, the one that IISc has, the umbrella agreement that IISc has with Intel, it's mostly a one-time investment for most part, the most painful part, because it goes on for many, many years, under which many projects can be put together. So going for these umbrella agreements between institutes rather than very project specific agreements in legal terms is probably a better approach. And this is something that Intel has taken, and Microsoft also.
Wow, great insight there. Yeah, thank you, thank you, Professor Basu. Thank you so much for that insight. So, we've talked about some of these collaborations. We've talked about the challenges that both industry and academia are facing, and how are, the industry leaders and from the academia, how are they dispelling these notions and these challenges and addressing these challenges. So let's, we can go to the next topic, which is the success criteria for collaboration and what benefits, are coming out, from these collaborations. So, Sumeet, I would want to ask you that, which technology areas or problems, which business problems are most suited for joint research with academia, and, which are not? What are the areas which you think are most suited and which areas are not suited?
Yeah, no, I think, let me answer that. And in continuation to the previous question about challenges, I think one challenge that ecosystem is facing is that there are still very few colleges and professors available for research. All the 100 odd companies want to work with the same set of faculty members. The base of that the faculty base across uh, tier 2 or mid-tier colleges haven't increased significantly. So that's another challenge that we all face, and that's a key area that more focus has to come in. We have some programs to encourage research in mid-tier, but I think collectively government, academia, Intel. I know academia also have a mentor-mentee relationship with some colleges. I think that's another area to ensure there's a larger faculty and researcher base available to solve problems. Now coming to what topic or areas that industries should focus on. I think if it's a problem that we want to solve in next 2 years or 3 years, then we should not go to academia. We should just do it ourselves. If we're looking at a problem that is 3 years to 5-7 years in the range, I think that's a perfect candidate to go in Indian academic system. We have tried to do research that are futuristic 8-10 years out. It's very difficult to do it right now. Let me put it this way. I'm not saying it cannot be done, but I think it's little difficult to do it right now. Although it's better to do that than doing a very short-term 2 to 3 years outcome. Right? The sweet spot would be 3 to 6-7 years kind of range if you're trying to solve a particular problem. But having said that, we also say what's the opportunities or that India has, right? India has a lot of data. India has problems that are population scale that Indians have to solve, Indian companies have to solve, Indian researchers have to solve. So applied research in those large problems that are unique to India are large enough and will be good for, if solved, will be good for the company as well as for academia and India per se, are the key problems to look into, broadly speaking, right? And then within that, broad applied research problem, then you can start figuring out what's area that I am particularly interested in, because academia has expertise throughout, right? From communications to architecture to data AI, they have quite a strong of competency with maths and statistics, right? So now what we have to find out is what in those areas suits us. For a company like Intel, we really focus on computer architecture and applied AI. Those have been the key areas for us to look into, and 5G and communications another area. But we do delve into other areas like materials, etc., wherever required. Because I think over a period of time, if we say where India will have a very strong edge in, will be the supply chain ecosystem, materials, design, and possibly packaging area as well, right? So those are also great areas to do research in with academia.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Sumeet, for those insights. Now, Padmini, what benefits have you witnessed, while doing these research collaborations, and what KPIs are in place to, to understand and assess the effectiveness of these collaborations? Yeah. Padmini, you are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So some of the very obvious benefits that we see is in terms of niche capability development in region, and it could be research capability development and supply chain capabilities as well. And this will really enable the technical talent here in region to get engaged in a wholesome experience in terms of technology and R&D in their own area. So this is a very attractive proposition for both talent within GE and for academia and other supply chain industries, MSMEs and things like that. So this is one of the biggest advantage for us. The other obvious advantages are definitely access to domain expertise that is available in the institutions, and the talent pipeline. So we have many examples of having smooth transition from students working on our R&D projects, getting transition and becoming employees in the organization eventually. And definitely the other advantage which we really cannot discount is the cost arbitrage that we get in retiring risks early on in terms of maturing technology. So given these benefits, yes, it's important that we have KPIs, we have metrics to keep measuring ourselves in terms of how we are doing. In terms of project execution, the KPIs will not be any different from any other projects that we do within GE. Definitely there is safety, cost and delivery metrics, all of these become important. But given that I know our objective or the benefit that we are really looking at is in terms of capability development, we also look at intellectual property generation through these projects, capacity utilization, and speed to market. How quickly we put technology into our product, identify risks, elevate them or retire them early on. So these are some of the KPIs that we use to measure the success of these initiatives.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you for shedding light on those. Now, the two professors on the panel. So I would want to ask them that, from a university perspective, what is the criteria for determining the success of these collaborations? So we can start with Professor Basu this time. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think from the university perspective, so our first focus as an academic is our students. So if our students involved in those projects are doing well, which means that they are able to produce, say, contribute the work they're doing, they're actually contributing to their thesis or not. That's a very important thing, right? And also, once they work on those projects, if they are actually relevant, cutting edge, then that immediately helps in their next employment as well. So that's the in other terms, like in how well they are actually trained. So training the students is the most important part, and side product of that is publications and so on. So that's a success criteria, how well the student is getting trained, like how well they're doing in their research, how well that is actually helping them set up for the next stage of their career. So that's, in my mind, is the success criteria for as an academic. Over to you.
Got it. Yeah. Professor Manu, if, same question for you, the success criteria for such collaborations.
Yeah, I would, again, supplement all those points that have been already made by just a couple of other things. One is obviously the fact that we engage in a meaningful relationship with industry, and because of the project that we do once, we want to see the industry come back again and again for more projects with us, or continue a longer term engagement, which helps us build around the core area of research. And I think that's a long-term win-win sort of a situation for industry and academia together. The second, obviously, is creation of new intellectual property. There are challenges, of course. I guess we'll talk about that also separately. But yeah, creation and possible future monetization of IP. I think that's where a lot of the universities abroad have really done very well. There, I think we have to really grow. Indian academia has to do a lot more there with the collaboration with industry. I think that's where we'll really focus a lot more on. One more aspect is trying to also get more industry involvement in our fundamental research also. I think that would be a primary area that we need to look at our successful collaborations, because if we get industry engaged in fundamental research, that would be ideal from our perspective also, as again, I think some people have pointed out earlier that our students like to get trained in the state-of-the-art technologies and produce something totally original. And I think that's where that would be a major point of success also.
Yes, thank you, Professor Manu. So now we'll come to the topic of engagement models. So to Sumeet and Padmini, both of you, what type of engagement models are being leveraged, to ensure seamless collaborations, between all the stakeholders that are involved, and how can also SMEs now engage with nearby universities, etc. So Padmini, we can start with you.
Typi- Typically, we, as I mentioned earlier, we engage with academic institutions on a cost-sharing model where we have governments funding co-funding the research, and we take up a part of that share. Um, so this is something that we have fine-tuned over a period of time, and yes, I think we need to really look at fine tuning some of the ways we do it, and considering there are constraints in terms of processes that mostly academic institutions are government bodies. They have the process. They are accountable for the public funds, and we respect that. And given and understanding these processes. And even in industries like large corporations like Intel and GE also have our own process to ensure, um, you know, ensure transparency and compliance. So it's about understanding the process between the two organizations and respecting them. And if we understand the intent behind them, we can always come up with ways to work around or set ourselves to handle and account for the time it takes, or the processes that we have to go through. And I think that's where we can fine tune our methods better.
Great, great. So Sumeet, same question for you. What are the engagement models that we can, that can be leveraged for, these collaborations?
Yeah, I think for industries or SMEs who are trying to do it for the first time, a very easy way which I thought is to fund a research student through a faculty member if possible. That will ensure that they get to experience what it means, working with a faculty member and a researcher. And fortunately, Padmini also mentioned the cost of a research student in India is relatively very less as compared to the Western countries. So as an experiment, I would encourage organizations who want to do it should experiment this route, identify the faculty members who is in their area, fund one or two of the students through the faculty member, of course. That will give them some experience on what benefits they can get, and then once with that experience, they can then start building on the actual research which they want to accomplish, which is more project oriented. What are the actual outcomes that they want, etc. Typically, from an outcome perspective, uh, while IP is an important area, it's not always IP, right? I think we have, for us, we have gone beyond a point saying that, okay, IPs are important. Some research will generate IPs, and who gets that IP, whether it's academia or industry, is not really that important as long as we are able to generate those good IPs from India. But then some of the research may not be IP related. It's mainly specific project consulting or specific identification whether this thing works, that thing doesn't work, right? Those kind of research areas. Those are fairly easy to execute, and sometimes it will be good to get a consortium model if it's a particular industry, because then it reduces the cost and it adds you know more experimental power in those kind of use cases,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And of course, I also encourage that government has several programs that industry could leverage. Padmini just mentioned FIRE, so it was an industry program which actually industry set up with government, right? So it is not a program that government automatically rolled out. So industry went and said, hey, we need a unique program, and current government programs do not offer something that we need. And after a lot of effort, the government then rolled out that program, right? But there are several other programs that are available in public domain. So people should go and check those out, because sometimes those are tailored programs and you can move very fast on those programs.
Got it. Got it. Absolutely. Completely agree. Professor Manu, now, while entering into a collaboration, a research collaboration with the industry, what do you think are some of the key points that can be considered, in terms of research areas or ownership of IPs? And also, what flexibility do you also expect from the industry?
Yeah, I think this point, of course, has been talked about by Sumeet and Padmini to some extent earlier. Yes, I think oftentimes the agreements between the legal teams on both sides take a bit longer than sometimes the project itself in some cases. But yeah, I guess that is part of the game, and each team has to realize that they stand to gain from the collaboration. So while we do understand that our institute comes before anything else, but at the same time, we have to realize that the industry also has to be in a situation where they stand to gain from the overall collaboration. So yes, we do expect them to be flexible a little bit on the IP clauses, but at the same time, I'm sure that they expect the same of us too. So I'm not really going to say more on that. The other aspect, of course, is the extent of depth that we want to go to in the research topics. Very often when we are engaging PhD students, there is obviously the need to do publications and so on. And in some cases, we've had difficulties where the data has been kept confidential and students have not been allowed to publish. So these are some sticky points when it comes to formulating agreements that are agreeable to both sides. But yes, we enable dialogue. Essentially, we let the owners be on the principal investigator, because ultimately, if the principal investigator wants to go ahead with the work, the institute really does not stop him or her from taking it up. So even if the IP clauses are not essentially favorable to the institute, the PI has the final say. So we mostly go with the wishes of the principal investigator.
Absolutely, absolutely, completely agree. Professor Basu, same question to you as well. So, what key points are you considering when it comes to, research areas or research topics or IP as well? And also, again, what flexibility do you expect from the industry?
Yeah. So, the things to consider, as I reiterate, like, for me or any of the academic institution, students comes first. So the students' interest come first. So as Professor Manu mentioned, is that, if we are engaging any PhD students and even MTech by research students, they need to actually publish to graduate. So if there are clauses that completely blocks off the publication out of the work, I as a faculty would never venture into it because that compromises my students' interest. I think that is true for any of the faculties. So that is something industry, I think, Intel particularly, I know they have their own Intel labs. They publish in the same places. So I don't think that is a big problem with any of the big MNCs that are known to have research labs. But that is something to be aware of when some industry trying to actually do research engagement with the academia for the first time. And then there are ways, like for example, we do have NDAs, non-disclosure agreement with Intel. So there are specific things that the Intel can actually declare up beforehand, like, look, these are the things that you cannot actually reveal without without our explicit permission. So academia needs to be very careful about respecting that. So as long as there is an understanding, it is okay. But at the same time, from the academic point of view, when you are engaging with students, particularly PhD students, their needs to graduate needs to be, this is something that from the industry one needs to appreciate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Professor Basu. So very, invigorating session. Great insights that we've received from all the panelists, from the industry as well as the academia side. Now we have some questions from the audience as well. There's an audience member who's asking if there are any examples of successful research collaborations in IT services. So this is for all the panelists, in case if you have some examples on that. Yeah.
Yeah, IT services specifically, I think, there's not too much research specifically associated with that. But other fields of IT, yes, like already Sumeet has mentioned some of the areas that have been on the anvil for discussions between academia and industry. IT services specifically, no, I would not think so.
Sure. Great. Yeah. And like a bit of a controversial question here. So, especially for GE, for Padmini and for Sumeet, the audience member is asking that why organizations like Intel and GE, they are focusing on IITs and IISc only. Why not approach other, institutions? So, yeah. So any thoughts on that?
So I can take it up.
Yeah. Yes.
So as I mentioned earlier, there we have collaborated with SERB, part of Department of Science and Technology, on that FIRE program, and that's open to anybody, all the organizations to apply for. And we have examples of really going beyond IIScs and IITs, and that's where any organization and come and share your experience in the domain that we are really looking at, and propose a solution, and it's only basis the merit of the solution and not basis which organization it is coming from. And these kind of initiatives really help us to reach out to larger talent pool rather than restricting ourselves. And most of our earlier approach was based on our network and connections, and basis either it's because we have alumni in our organization, or there are people moving across these organization. Basis that network, we used to come together and collaborate. But this kind of approach helps us to reach out and go beyond our known network. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Sumeet, you want to add something on that?
Sure. So I think I briefly talked about it, saying that the research, it's not like industry doesn't want to participate. On the contrary, we want that research base to increase, right, beyond that 10-20 colleges. And research is a competitive process, right? There are some exploratory research you could do. You could say, okay, I want to do some small research with a university that I'm unsure of. That's okay. But whenever we talk of research in the real research sense, where you'll have significant money, significant industries, time being spent, it becomes a competitive process where a strong proposal will result into kind of winning that research deal in some way, right? And what we have experienced is that while there is something called art of writing a proposal, which I think should be taught to budding researchers. But while IITs and IISc have this strong way to submit proposals and do collaborations, I think for the next tier, the middle tier, as I say, the best way is they should kind of partner with the top tier, right? Because by themselves, it's a natural journey, right? There's nothing to be ashamed of saying that, that I'm middle tier and tomorrow I'll become tier 1. It's not going to happen, right? It's a journey. And the way I see academicians and academic university very supportive of having joint research done with another university. So that's one way where middle tier could work with the top tier university, submit a joint proposal to industry, and then over a period of time, right, that middle tier university also comes into top tier, and then make their name in the academic research and industry research over a period.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So one last question that we'll take because of paucity of time. Are there any use cases that all of you have seen where, Indian research projects have, they have been globalized? So any examples of, Indian innovation for the world, so to say? So anything that you want to share there?
Well, there are several,
Mm.
and one that comes to my mind is the whole autonomous driving case, right? When the research was very strong in autonomous driving, and
Yeah.
researchers in India also wanted to do it in this way. I remember students used to say, I want to develop an autonomous car. But the
Mm.
problem was that Globe was anyways ahead by at least 10 years. So it was a catching game. But what we said is the problem that no one is solving, but is a global problem, is unstructured driving conditions,
Yeah.
because how we drive in India is very unstructured. Can we do
Mm-hmm.
an applied research in those areas? And that research then goes to global database, and get fed into the overall
Mm-hmm.
driving conditions at a global level. So we've got good success in those areas. And of course, in the architecture space, Arka knows it, and with some other faculty members, we've got uh, architectural outcomes that goes to our product level at a um, global level. So research works in various domains, makes it way at
Yeah.
a corporate level, at a global level. So there are big challenges that we can solve at India level, which I think academicians are doing,
Yeah.
and some or most of them are also focused and make their way for a global impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful to hear that. So, thank you so very much. Thank you, Sumeet. Thank you, Padmini. Thank you, Professor Manu. And thank you, Professor Basu, for this invigorating session. And thank you for sharing your views and experience with all of us. So, before concluding the session, we'll have a quick poll from the audience. So, I would request the moderator to kindly share the audience. So, the poll, please. No, the next, yeah, you can answer the third question onwards. You already answered the first and second.
No, let them answer all of them.
All of them? Okay, sure. Okay. So which of the following organization do you belong to? And on a scale of 1 to 5, how relevant was today's session? With 1 being not relevant and 5 being very relevant. 5 is the highest. Then, how are you willing to implement these collaborative applied projects or leverage these best practices that have been shared by the leaders here? So, these are some of the questions. And again, how will you rate today's session? 1 being, the lowest and 5 being the highest. So, few more seconds, please. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much to all the leaders and all the audience members who have joined for this conversation today. I would also like to inform everyone that we'll also publish a detailed playbook comprising of the key insights and best practices on industry academia collaboration. And I hope everyone enjoyed this session and took home some of the best practices and nuances and engagement models. So we'll be back tomorrow again, the second session in the series, which is on joint curriculum design to prepare industry-ready talent. So do join in again today, same time at 10:30. And thank you so very much to all our panelists. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.